Alright guys, here we are for today's shave. This is in the month of June and we're in the Lather games and we are near the end. You still have enough time if you want to try to get in and do one of the last couple of days. I am recording this before midnight today, and so the theme of a menthol soap, a cooling agent soap, is going to be satisfied, but I won't be able to post it before midnight. But that's okay. I've got one shave in elsewhere in the month, a little earlier, and I just wanted to get at least one in because I like the Lather game so much, and I just want to be a little bit consistent with that and participate in some small way. The rest of the gear, other than Barrister and Mann Presto, used it recently, and I was browsing and I was trying to find a cooling agent soap. I don't have access to my whole collection right now. I'm renting a room, but this one turns out has a very minor amount of menthol in it. Is it actually menthol, or is it? Yep, it's menthol. There are a few other synthetic cooling agents out there, and I think I do actually like those better than menthol. I've used this soap once before, and the level of menthol in it made me happy. It was just provided into the mix to give a little bit of a lift in the kind of the mood of the soap, and so it's not a big cooling feeling. Most of the time that translates for me into a burning feeling, and I don't like that when you add menthol to a soap. So I've got a few menthol soaps I could have drawn on if I could have found them in time, but I don't like using them because of the burning sensation. So I think my skin is probably a little more sensitive than your average guy's for that reason. We're going to try that Wizamet blade. This will be its fourth use. This is the same one I used just a couple of days ago, and I had it in the razor, in the Aristocrat 16 that I used from the UK, vintage Gillette. And we're going to put it this time, though, in a Fatip. This is the closed comb model that they have, which is the same head whether you get this grande handle or the piccolo handle. You still get the same head if it's got the closed comb. And, of course, if it's not the slant. The brush is going to be, I'm pretty confident this is a B13, and Dogwood, Briar Brushworks, I believe, is a combo handle here, made from two different vendors. I think maybe Briar Brushworks provided Stephen with the wood, maybe, and then he completed it with the polymer and acrylic and all the other ingredients that he uses to do his magic. He has decided to quit making brushes and scents and stuff so that especially Courtney could focus on other things that they needed to do, and that's awesome. I'm glad that they're heading in the way that they want, but we will kind of there's definitely a void left by their creativity and skill at what they do. The Fatip, it's a three-piece, as you can see, kind of like the vintage Gillette old type, and the tech as well. Now the tech, and I think the old type as well, both had mechanisms in place to make sure the blade was aligned perfectly each time. But like the DE89 series that you'll have with from the Muleys and the Parkers and the Mercurs, and the Jaggers, the blade has a little bit of wiggle room there. However, if you just kind of drop it on straight and keep everything flat, then somehow the law of averages works in your favor, and most of the time you don't have to do any adjustment. But even with those other ones and this one, you should always check it because there is a little bit of wiggle room. You may discover that you could even customize it a little bit and make one side be more narrow than the other so that one side is more smooth than the other. So you could, on the first pass, you could use the more exposed side. And when I say exposed, 1/2 millimeter, 1/8 of a millimeter. I mean, we're talking about a very small amount here. And so even if you didn't even work with it very much. The Gentile, which is the name of the closed comb, is, no, the Gentile is the, see, they kind of go by the handle instead of the head with the Fatip folks. This does beat all those others out in terms of price. Those four that I told you, the Parker, Merkur, Jagger, Muley, and all those clones where it looks like the same thing. Most of those heads are pot metal with some kind of coating on it, and especially in that bolt, when that coating wears away, it will break eventually. Sometimes it may take a couple of years. If you clean it and dry it faithfully after each use, then you could get several years out of it. It just depends. Some people have had them break within 6 months because once that threading is likely where it's going to wear away because of the tightening that you do to assemble and disassemble the razor. That's where that plating is going to wear away. When the plating is gone, pot metal is very vulnerable to that corrosion due to the water, and it will eventually break. But this guy costs less than those other razors, and he's got brass at his core, and so beats them on all counts. And holy cow, I've got such great support at the blade edge from this head and the open comb as well, that the shave is just smooth. The feel of the razor on your skin is very, very smooth. In the past, I have laughed out loud when I was using the razor because it was cutting so well and so comfortably at the same time that it was so extreme how comfortable it was, but it was still working, that it was funny to me, and I just had to kind of giggle. All right. We, as a part of the challenge today, are using filtered water. I went and filled this bottle up with water from the tap in the kitchen. It has a little extra one. The guy who owns this house bought it from a lady who had installed filters. There's a whole house filter, and so anytime I'm shaving from here, it's with filtered water anyway, even just coming out of the spigot right here. But the extra filter water that's by the kitchen sink there for drinking and stuff is even more filtered. And so it's probably more filtered and more clean than most bottled water out there, because as we know, most of that is somebody else's tap water anyway. So what I did was I filled up the soaking container that the brush was soaking in for several minutes. I'm going to get that brush back in there. So I filled it up with that same kind of water. And then I also filled up this, which is going to add water to the lather as we start to build it up. And so all the water used for the shave, except for the rinses. But I guess I could pour some of this out onto my hands for the rinses and keep it all kind of filtered. And we can see if there will be any difference. That is the challenge for today. I'm very interested to read other people's experiences with this that may not have filtered water in their, kind of coming from their faucet by nature, to see if they notice a difference. And it takes so little water to shave that in terms of what you put on your brush, how you soak your brush, and then what you may add into your lather, that it doesn't, you could buy a jug and have it last a very long time. You could buy even a jug of distilled water for $1 or something, and then it would last you maybe a whole month. So if that, probably longer. So we're going to use this Presto, and it had a good many notes. Oh, is this the one? Yeah, this is the same one I used when I needed, so I am repeating soaps, but that's okay. I'm not competing in points this year. This is the one with 14 different scent notes, and it has a little bit of lime in it, and I'm curious. I wasn't bothered by the lime until the end of the shave last time. I'm interested to see how my nose and my brain are going to interact with the scent this time. I liked it a little more in the beginning of the shave last time than I did at the end. So today was a soap with menthol in it, and then I noticed this one has that. I went and did find an alcohol splash that has Chiseled Face Summer Storm that has menthol in it as well. Chiseled Face puts out their stuff with menthol too. All right, so let's wet my face a little bit. I'm going to pause you while I use this water to do that. Now let's start mixing up, loading up the brush, and we'll try again this kind of trophy bowl. Shiny pewter lather bowl. Didn't start out to be a lather bowl. It's got some notes about memories, and so I think it's supposed to be sitting on somebody's sideboard or something with fruit in it or potpourri or something decorative. But I used it for a lather bowl and it worked well, except for this little ridge right here that kind of bit into my fingers. So we'll give it another try. Last time I loaded longer than I needed to. Let's maybe not do quite as much this time. I change my tilt so you guys can see a little better. Good bit of water swimming around here. Big bubbles first, as you can see. It'll gradually start to overflow. But then once I start to see the big bubbles kind of disappear, then I'll stop. I'll let that excess drip into the bowl. I will also take some of the excess and use it as kind of a pre-wash. Also to have the scent start to kind of warm up in my nose. When I drink whiskey or any kind of liquor, I always like to kind of warm it up with my nose. Just kind of sniff it and come back to it in a second and sniff it again to really start to apprehend the different flavors that are happening. And so this kind of lets me do that with whatever lather I'm going to build. All right. This was a little bit of a pain when I was cleaning it out because I'm holding it down low and I'm pouring water into it and rinsing the brush. I'm using it to clean the brush, and it was hard to hold on to. I was definitely missing the little hook handle of my 3D printed version. Now if I put my fingers like this, it's kind of slippery, but I'm not touching that kind of sharper edge there. Let's just try that. My wrist is kind of at a weird angle. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to show you guys the lather if I do that. I think it's handy for you guys if I mix the lather up the way you can see it as it starts to develop, and that way if you need to know the kind of the stages of how a lather comes together, if you're learning, if you have trouble with your lather, then I think that's probably helpful. I started out not with as much water in the brush, and so you can see it's not very bubbly. It started off just kind of frothy in a small bubble kind of way. The only complaint I have with this brush, love the handle, love the knot, one of my favorites ever. I wish the handle were just a little bit longer to give my big hands a little bit more to hold on to. So I'm going to go ahead and add some water. Usually about 20 milliliters of water is what I add for lathers. And that is not something I figured out until after I had lathered this way many times with many different types of soap. And I was just consistently shaking a certain amount of the water out of my brush before I would load it on the soap. And so if you keep things consistent, that helps you. And then I gradually found out that using my little jigger there to add water to the lather, gradually kept seeing figures of 18, 20, 22, those kind of figures show up as how much extra water I had to add to the lather. And so it's kind of handy. I was able to then pour, if I want, I can pour all the water I want to use into the lather at first. And then it's just a matter of mixing it until I get the consistency that I want. It'll slowly thicken. Or if it starts off really bubbly, it'll calm down from a airy, bubbly mess to something that looks a little bit more like this. And of course that also meant that I was using roughly the same amount of soap loaded in my brush. If I went all willy-nilly and way overloaded more than usual, then I would need to add more water to compensate for that, to keep the lather from being too dry. So now let's talk about the scent for a minute, something I didn't do the first time I used it. Grassy, green, almost like a lemongrass kind of green is there. What violet leaf is in here. Jasmine's in here. Jasmine is a flowery type smell. The lime, I think, is definitely very forward right now. But yeah, almost like a green grass, not lawn mowy grass, almost like the ocean side type of grass that's on the dunes. You know, that if I were to combine that with some lady perfume, and maybe some very, very, very light woody notes. If the woody notes were stronger in this, I would probably like it, but I don't really like this too much. I appreciate what Will was trying to do. It's just not one that's made for my nose. You know, everybody's different. And then the lime, to me, is something that turns it into something that I'm less excited about. I don't like just the combination of lime with all these notes. You can see how it's moving very slowly. That's an attribute you can look for in your own lather. You can add so much water that it actually moves kind of quickly if you want, and that could be a sign that you like your really wet lather. You could make it so dry and like it that way that it doesn't move at all. It's up to you, whatever you find. But I strongly encourage you to someday make it so wet that it's actually, if you're holding your brush like this, it's actually dripping down onto your fingers. Make it that wet and mix it for a little while. Mix it for several minutes. If you just mix it for 1 or 2 minutes, then you might get that kind of wetness, but it's not going to be a homogeneous mixture. There'll be some much drier lather and soap elsewhere in the brush, and so it's not going to behave like it should. It's not going to offer you those slick properties necessarily. So try it at some point. That way you can know what the ultra slick lather kind of feels like. And so at least you have an informed decision when you decide how you like your own water level in your soap. I'm going to pour again a little bit of this filtered water to kind of re-wet my beard. A couple of days worth of growth is what I'm looking at right now. All right, yep, definitely some slickness left over from that pre-shave quantity of suds that I put on my cheeks. All right, so, and let's lift the lather up for you. You can kind of just see its viscosity a little bit when I do that. And then as you work on your own, if you get a big blob up on your brush, then you can kind of wiggle it and watch how it behaves. See the way it falls, how big it gets before it drops, how long the tips there are when it drops. Those are all attributes that you can kind of memorize when you and learn where your lather needs to be for your own preferences. Did not wash my face beforehand, as usual. So this is doing the job right now. And when you do have a bowl full of lather, it's easy to afford to do that. I think I hit the quantity about right because I don't have tons of lather in the bowl, but I have plenty to do the job. So I think my loading was about right. Kind of soften up the hairs a little bit more, just get them really clean away any dirt from the day. Also, if you can get under the hairs, I think that's what people say is the lather is for. Whether it does that or not, for sure, I'd really be curious to know. I know that, some of those thick, dry, pasty lathers that don't offer you very much slickness. Now, if those get under your bristles, under your stubble, then yeah, they'll do some lifting, but they're not going to be a pleasure to shave with. All right, let's see how this Gentile is going to feel in a couple days' growth. A fairly new blade. Yeah. It's much nicer than before, and my stubble is longer than it was the other day. And I know I've used that 16 many times, enough to know that it's rarely that rough. And so what this is this is just a certain kind of blade that works better with the Fatip than with that particular aristocrat. This is just clearing away hair with no problem. Easily, just like if it's a 1 day of growth instead of 3, I don't feel, of course, any tugging at all. I was really feeling the sharpness with the vintage aristocrat with this blade. It left me feeling a little tender, but like I said at the time, and it turned out to be true, just a little bit of the balm or aftershave at the end, and by the time I walked out of the bathroom, my skin was fine. So it just left me feeling a little tender, but nothing really of consequence. But this guy right here, boy, this is super comfy. Again, yeah, I'm not liking the smell all that much. It is definitely a spring and summertime scent, but it's fresh. It is kind of energizing a little bit. And yeah, I'm not really feeling any menthol. I think maybe I'm feeling, if I think about it. If I don't think about it, I'm not really feeling any kind of a burn from the menthol. So this Wizamet is obviously just a blade that is more suitable for this Fatip, and it's working really, really well, and it's just going to get better from here, having taken off most of the growth. I do pick up some of the cedar. I just wish it was a little bit stronger than some of the flowery type elements that are in this soap, the lime. I'm not picking up as much lime right now. I'm definitely picking up the florals. Some of the higher end notes have but kind of burned away a little bit. So I think maybe we're getting more into the heart of the heart notes that are a part of the makeup. If you didn't know that, most of the time, if you have a quality creator of the scent, then they will design it often with 3 layers, top, middle, and bottom notes. And that's usually owing to the fact that certain scents evaporate more quickly. And so often those are going to be the top notes. The ones that stay with you for hours, those are going to be the bottom notes. Woodiness, I think maybe sometimes amber, patchouli, the oaky, cedar type notes. Those are the base notes. Tonka bean, sandalwood. Those will hang around with you long after the shave, long after the floral have evaporated. All right. Now let me rinse my face. I don't think I used this water to do the rinse the first time. My filtered water. And no, I don't believe my lather is changed, is very different from usual, which is the goal of today's challenge. So my water is normally pretty clean here. I am in the process of buying a house. Lord willing, I'll be able to move in a while, and it'll be an adventure to set up my bathroom with my shaving gear. Hopefully have better access to it so that it'll be easier to have a fun shave. And then we'll see what kind of water that particular location has. If I need to go and use filtered water, you know, or if the water of the house is just fine. One tip, even if you've got super hard water, you can just go and get some distilled water. And then don't use pure distilled, mix it half and half with your tap water. Because, I mean, if you're basically taking the hardness of your water and you're dividing it in half when you do that with distilled water. And so that'll take almost anybody in the nation's water to a very acceptable level. And so you don't have to use the pure distilled water. You can bring in some cheaper water from your tap, you know, because it's a team effort at that point. If you do want to use pure distilled, then fine. All right, so that is what? That was the second pass. Okay, a little water on my face now. Okay, so maybe since I didn't do a rinse before, you know, because that right there was my second pass. And so I thought that I had done a rinse with the sink water, but I had not actually. So yeah, the rinses are being done with the ultra filtered water. The brush was soaking in the ultra filtered water. And then that same high filtered water was used to add in. And as you can see, we don't really have too much. So I think I hit it about right. Because I've got about 2 passes of lather right here. I can put it, because you don't need very much at all. You don't even really have to see it. I could lay down almost a clear, transparent layer of it. And you can see this is not transparent at all, but I've got much more. Look at this. I've got another 2 passes right there. And then here's another test for your mixing skills. If you look at your lather that you squeeze out of your brush, is it the same consistency as the lather that you have been using throughout the shave? Is it creamier? Is it thicker? See mine? That's just as it's consistent. That's just the same lather that I've been using. It's neither more wet nor more dry, and that is proof that during the mixing process, I mixed it up for long enough to get a homogeneous mixture. Now, Am I saying that you always must get a homogeneous mixture? No, maybe the speed that you need to accomplish your shave-in means that you just kind of get what you get. But if you've got time and you're trying to get a really consistent lather, then keep mixing, and then at the end do that comparison I just did, and keep mixing until by the end of the shave you're looking at the same lather at the end that you used on your face the whole time. Then you know that you're consistent with your lather generation, and then you're getting the best out of your soap that you can, and your hydration level is going to then it'll be consistent. You may learn from that point on. You may learn, okay, I need to add more water, but then as you do that and then you keep mixing long enough, then now you've got a more hydrated lather throughout, not just on the stuff that's outside the brush. So, but you can definitely be troubleshooting your lather and be thrown for a few loops if you don't mix for long enough, because then you basically are dealing with two kinds of lather. Here you are with maybe some really wet stuff on the outside of your brush, and then you start mixing, and then as you go, it gets thicker on your face. Because if you didn't mix it throughout consistently, then what's inside the brush is going to be drier. And then as that dryness comes out, now you're starting to get a little too dry on your face, and it's not going to give you the slickness that you want. Or vice versa, if you didn't get a consistent mixing process, you may have a bunch of water in here inside your brush, and then what looks like good lather on the outside, you put it to your face, and in a couple of strokes, that water gets pressed by the smushing of the brush, and it releases some of that water, and then your lather is just kind of washed out. I've had that happen before for sure on this channel. And then it just kind of washes all the lather off your face, and you wonder where it all went. All right, third pass. I do like grassy notes in my soap, but this just has those grassy notes with lime and with florals. It does have, see, this is where I would be laughing. It's almost like I've got a steel dowel and I'm moving it across my face. Well, part of that is because it's been so efficient in cutting my stubble that there's just not any stubble left for it to cut. Now, when I get down here where it's a harder reach to get the stubble because of the softer skin, I will start feeling that cutting coming back. But man, it is just super comfortable. Matter of fact, it's so smooth. I've read that some guys actually don't like it. They almost they feel like they need to hear a when they're shaving. They feel like they're doing something, I guess. Super comfortable as I was doing the rinses. No tenderness at all. Just proof that this particular razor is a better match. Summer Storm now, man, I don't know how many times I've ever used this. I wasn't blown over by it the first time I tried the soap. And of course, since it's got the menthol, it's another reason I probably kind of had it on the shelf. There we go. Summer Storm has earth, rain, pine, and moss. But I declare there's some other things in there. But it works very well with the Presto from Barrister and Mann. They were exploring and you can read the write-up in the description about the scent here. It's not a popular one that you see around very much. I guess a lot of other people maybe felt like I did. But I'm really glad that Will tried that experiment. I like violet. And I like, what was it, leather? Yeah, I like leather a lot. Unfortunately, though, maybe the lime, maybe the flowery jasmine, maybe it's what screwed it up for me. But anyway, this worked very well with it, the Summer Storm. And now I've got a good shave. Thanks so much for joining me. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. Good night.